So welcome back to Vintage Steel Garage. This is part 2 of the steering work. In the last episode we diagnosed the actual problem with the steering is the universal joint, UJ, on the actual steering column. So today we're going to flush the fluid through and we're going to go for a test drive, and then hopefully the steering is finished. So continuing on the power steering, while I wait for the parts to come with the actual ball joint that I damaged in taking it off, and also the clips for the belly pan, I'm going to replace the power steering fluid. Now there's various ways you can do this. Some people say disconnect all hoses, let it drain down and refill. The problem there is you have the tendency to introduce airlocks. So what I'm going to actually do is just with a syringe empty the reservoir bottle out, replace it with some clean fluid, run the engine for a few minutes and just keep doing that, and eventually I will replace most of the fluid, 90% of the fluid, and it should be a lot better. So we'll pull the first syringe out, have a look at it. I'm going to put it into little cups, keep the colour, and hopefully we'll get a colour change from the first time, from the first fluid before I've replaced it to the last. So let's have a look at this. So I've just got a simple syringe here with a tube on, which is going to draw a little bit out, fluid out. It's probably going to be a bit of a painfully slow process if I'm honest, but so there's the first pull of the fluid. I think I'll do 2 at a time. I think the reservoir is big enough for that. So first pull of the fluid. That is the fluid that has come out, which is a very dark green, virtually black. In fact, this oil is CHF11, Pentose CHF11. Pentose is a make, but CHF11 is a crucial bit. So this, you'll see, is a blacky colour, and that is the colour it should be, which is like a very sort of drab olive green. Yeah, sort of like an olive green. And that's what's come out. So you can see, I think what's happened there is I think someone's put ATF oil in, which is normal power steering fluid, mixed it, and that's why you've got that dark colour. So I'm sure a flush of oil will be a lot better. I think you can see that though, get the idea. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to keep the first one, the sample one, and then we'll compare at the end of the sample. So this could be a bit of a lengthy process of refill, run, empty, refill, run, empty, and keep doing that for a while. So let's see how we go. So if you're still watching, that idea didn't work at all, and the reason why is the way the reservoir works on top of the engine. And if I just explain to you what I thought was the case, I thought it was the usual case of a bottle here like this and a pump here, with basically pushing fluid in, fluid coming out, going through the rack and back in. So in the reservoir here, the fluid is always going through and circulating. Well, that's not the case on this. How it is on the 911 is it circulates around the pump like that, and then sat on top of here is the bottle, so it's a bit like more like a hopper. So all that happened is I just took the fluid out of here and replaced it with clean fluid. So what I've ended up having to do is disconnect one of the pipes. There's a hardline pipe down here, drain it from this point and keep refilling it from that point. So I think that's the point we're at now. So we've gone from a bit of a quick win to a bit of the car's fighting me. And what I mean by it's fighting me is, if I take you underneath, I've had to actually drop off the anti-roll bar to gain access, and in taking the anti-roll bar off, it does give me an opportunity to look at these bushes here and replace these and give this a bit of a paint. Yeah, so some of these are going to need a bit of a tap through them, or a bit, I may even need a helicoil. Just the one of them on that side went, but it's now giving me access here to get up, and you can probably just see I've undone the fitting there, and it's leaking out of there, leaking down here, and I have caught some of it, and it is, you'll see, quite dirty. So I'm quite pleased that that's the case. What I need to do now is go around to the back of the car, fill the reservoir up, go around to the, where are you? Go around to the back of the car, fill the reservoir up, and take it from there. But even though a small setback, I'm not bothered, because I still think I've got a win on the actual steering rack itself, that I don't need to replace the steering rack. And driving the car, I couldn't tell that at all. It was quite a weird feeling. It was sort of stiff, not stiff, stiff, not stiff, but there didn't seem to be a pattern to it. If the car was cold, it was worse. I went on a car park, went left, right, lots of turning, lock to lock, and it freed up. So I thought, oh, that's worked the power steering fluid, and it's now working okay. But I think what had happened is I'd just basically exercised the universal joint on the steering column and freed it up a little bit. So it was only when I actually got it on these quick jacks that when I got hold of the wheel and I pushed, when I say the wheel, the road wheel, and I pushed from lock to lock, as I was looking at the steering wheel I could see every 180 degrees it was stiff, and that's what led me to that conclusion. So I'm pleased with that. So I'm still riding high on that, and just got a few problems that, you know, the usual case of whoever idea it was, steel bolts in an aluminium subframe. They should have put some anti-corrosive paste on or something, because the top of the bolt that sticks out corrodes, and then as you unwind it, it then pulls all the threads out. So there's a couple I've got a helicoil, and but it does give me the opportunity to paint these suspension parts that I've taken off. Here, let me show you. So I've taken these off, and these, they look worse than they are, but these do need cleaning up. All this off, it looks worse than it is. Checking that we've still got the thickness of the metal there, which we have. Those of you that don't know, rust always ends up 3 times as thick as the steel that's come off, so it's not quite as bad as what you've lost. There hasn't been that much thinning on the metal as it looks, but I will check them over, tilt all these out, give these a clean, give them a coat of black hammerite paint. I could powder coat them, but you've just not got to make sure this project doesn't grow legs and get a bit carried away. So I'm going to clean those up, paint those up. Well, I'll carry on with my power steering drain, and I'll be back soon. So what I'm actually doing now is, I can only describe as something from a Benny Hill sketch really, where I'm running from the back of the car, having filled the reservoir up, starting the engine, very small, 3 seconds, 4 seconds if that, let the power steering fluid drain out of the front into a bowl, turn the engine off, run round, fill it up again, and keep checking what's coming out the actual front. Now if you have a look at this now, this is what's coming out at the moment, and you can still see it's quite dirty. So I'm just going to keep doing this until this comes through as a nice light green, and I might even set the camera up for a comedy value. All empty, clean, all underneath. Me at the back, fill the reservoir up, run round, start the engine, drip drip drip, turn off, run back, fill up. Reservoir full up. for added drama, I didn't get the ball in the right place. So it's now got like the Axon Valdez under here. So, more oil out. I think you can just see, still coming out dirty. So keep doing that till it flows clean. Power steering fluid replaced now. Gone through about 3 litres of it, maybe 3.5 litres of it. And you can see these are in the cups here, so starting from the left to the right is the newest to the oldest. And if you put a torch behind it, you'll see what I'm talking about, that this doesn't pass any light through it. Then you start to get a bit of colour coming through, bit more, and then the final change. And just as a reference, that's new. You can see it's a lot lighter. So there's 2 litres there, and there's umpteen there. So basically that's just all junk, and it's a lot cleaner now. Feels quite smooth to operate, so I'm quite pleased with that. So the ball joint has actually come today, so I'm going to put the ball joint on tonight now, and then that will be the steering, hopefully completed, and has ended up what could have been a bit of a nightmare job. Quite a nice simple job, although as most things go, you win some, you lose some. The bit I've probably lost on is the fact that looking at the back of the car, it looks like it needs a rear main seal, which I'm not too bothered about. It's not a big job. The cost of the part is about £20 to £25 for a seal. The labour is obviously free because it's my time. Basically, I've got to drop the gearbox out. To do that, you've got to drop the drive shafts off. Got to take the drive shafts off. Take the take the couplings off for the gear linkages. A few ancillary things, probably a gearbox mount. Put a stand under the engine. Put a stand on the gearbox and lower it down. And then I can actually get the clutch off as well. I need to take the clutch off, take the flywheel off and have a look behind it. While I'm in there, I'll have a look at the IMS as well. So I'm not too bothered about that, but I'll do that later. I'll get it back on the road, make my wish list of things up to do, and take it from there. So these are the parts that have arrived today from Design 911. We've got a new ball joint arm, so we'll put that on shortly. I've got some of the plastic nuts which were missing off the belly pan, clips as well that were missing off the belly pan at the front, and a radiator cap. Now we've got the radiator cap because one of the other problems it has is it's reported losing coolant. Now the radiator cap on here, part number is 996 106 447-4. Now the original one is obviously -0, that's the first series, but then obviously 01 came out. They must have had a problem with that. 2 came out, 3 and 4, and they moved up to 4. So we're now on 4, and I did have to actually replace this on my Boxster for the same reason. So I'm going to put this on, top the coolant up and see how it goes. It might not be this, but equally there is residue round the bottom of the cap as if it has been leaking, so I'm hopeful that will replace that as well. So I'm going to fit that, but let's get this ball joint on now. So I've got the new ball joint here, and it's quite simple to fit. It's just a direct replacement for the old one. When you take the old one off, just back the lock nut off on here just a little bit, so then you've really kept the steering angle correct, so you're not desperately going to get your geometry checked. But I'd always get the tracking checked after you've changed anything or disturbed your steering. And just as a check, just to make sure the parts are the same length, I usually go like thread to thread and just make sure it's the same in the manufacturer. A different manufacturer hasn't sort of made this arm longer, because if it has, it would affect the steering even more. So that one's for the bin, this one's going on. Just simply wind it down to where the lock nut is. We're virtually there. Push that in to the arm, put the nut on the back, tighten this nut down with an 18mm spanner or socket, tighten it up to the correct torque setting, nip this bolt up, and that's it done. As a comparison to where we first started, so all the steering's back on, all the wheels are on, everything's back together, power steering fluid has been replaced, ignition's on just so the steering lock's on. You'll remember how stiff it was before. So now, you can see it's quite easily pushed and it's smooth, that's the main thing. There's a bit of resistance because I'm pushing hydraulic fluid, but it's actually smooth, whereas before you could see it was actually binding. So, excellent. Very pleased with that. Obviously we've got the road test to go. We've got to put some of the belly pans back on, put all the new clips on, paint some of those suspension arms. Until next time, and hopefully I'll be telling you the road test is good. Thanks for watching. Please like and subscribe, and we'll get on to the next episode, which I'm not sure what it is yet, but thank you.